Hello, everybody. This is the corpse of KG82 Live, aka the Bald Brawlers. Um, First off, I guess we might as well start with the obvious. I wasn't on the YarskCap this weekend, so this will be known, I guess, as the very first and probably only YarskCap recap. So I guess I gotta give kudos to Zach. We talked briefly about doing the pod, but I'm not in the right mental state. Um, I lost my king, my champion, King Henry, and I just wasn't in the right mindset. So Zach said he'd take the lead, and I'm appreciative of that as a co-host. It was tough to miss, but I needed some time, so got to listen to the pod this morning, and I thought it wouldn't do justice without giving a few words to the people, just my general thoughts on the YarskCap, given that Zach and I originated it. So first off, I guess we're talking about Zach mentioned me missing obviously because of King Henry's injury. And the first problem I had, he referenced him still being there despite Raheem Mostert being injured week 1. He came on week 2. That is laughable to me that you're comparing the RB1 on a historic pace through 8 weeks of the year to a guy who has never missed a game in the last 2 years despite his massive workload. He's just a horse. And he's comparing him to Raheem Mostert, who had 2 carries and has never, like, he's shown success in the few times that he's played, but he's been hurt each year the past 2 years. So comparing the two just really didn't make much sense to me. So I understand a little bit why Zach tried to call that as a point of reference, but you're comparing the best running back in the NFL, MVP candidate, to a guy that has never stayed healthy the past 2 years. So I officially would like to say I will be back in my normal capacity next week. I just need a little more time, but I had to at least react to that. Also, just recently, I actually just pushed through a trade that Zach did. So I'm going to touch briefly on that. Pooty traded away Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. 2 of his, like, obviously his number 1 stud, with Dalvin Cook potentially being a top 3, maybe the number 1 running back rest of the year, for Joe Mixon and Keenan Allen. And it pains me to say that this really is a good deal for both parties. Zach, his whole team, I always knew he had a trade waiting for him because he had 4 stud wide receivers. And really, since receivers don't get injured as much, you only need 3. And so trading away Joe Mixon and Keenan Allen, who he perceived as the worst of his 4 receivers, for the elite potential number 1 running back, along with his handcuff. It makes sense for Zach to give his team the upside and that true elite running back that his team was missing. And for Pooty, just recently news of Devontae Parker is hurt. James Robinson is hurt. I'm not sure if he'll go. Calvin Ridley stood away for mental health issues. And so Pooty's team was just lacking the depth that it had earlier in the year. And so Pooty is not in the position where he can afford to wait for those players to come back, because you don't know when. He needs to get wins now, because it's going to be really close to, is he going to make the playoffs, because his team is so good. So he might not have the same upside of Cook, but his team is a lot more well-rounded in terms of overall construction. So unfortunately, it's a good move for him because I'm playing Pooty this week. Unfortunately, it's a great move for Zach. I think his team is now the clear team to beat, but it is what it is. It's a good deal for both parties. And I guess I got to say kudos to the both of them. With that in mind, just kind of touching base on a little bit of the King Henry and the Dalvin Cook injuries, just some philosophical things. Derrick Henry before Sunday's game, and I guess I was lucky to pick up Adrian because of a minor little thing. We're having a quarterback and I wasn't going to lose, but didn't handcuff him before. I know we touched on it earlier, but it's interesting to see which running backs you handcuff and which you don't, because Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, like when Dalvin Cook was down, Madison was still an RB1. Same can be said for a few running backs, but that's not the same for every situation. You have running backfields like, let's say the Chargers with Austin Eckler. If he was to go down, was the backup a clear pickup? You really don't know. Same, I thought, with Derrick Henry. So it's always interesting which running backs you typically want to try to find the handcuff for. There are a few tried and true examples, kind of with Chuba Hubbard and McCaffrey, Tony Pollard with Ezekiel Elliott, Madison and Dalvin Cook, and Saquon and Devontae Booker has shown to be a really good one as well. So there's interesting ways they can go about handcuffing. I didn't think if Henry fell that McNichols, who is the pass catching back, would be the number one ball carrier. So that's the reason I didn't have him handcuffed. So it'll be interesting. He could end up having the workload this week. We'll just have to wait and see, but fingers crossed it's going to be Adrian Peterson. Next thing, really quickly, I'll just touch briefly on the power rankings. I noticed my final reign of being number one fell with just reasons. Going to number 4, I think, is the right spot. I think Zach finally realized the error of his ways, and I think he's clearly a top 2 team. Ross with the new running backs, I think he's clearly up there as well. So for the most part, I don't have a problem with the power rankings. I just noticed one interesting thing is currently he has 3 of the 4 teams making the SACO, all members of the Natty division, which obviously we didn't get a win last week. So there really wasn't either movement from either division in terms of positioning for buys, but for the playoffs, obviously it's important. It'll be interesting when we have those interdivision matchups, and the Busch Light is, after this week, it's all pretty much exclusively Busch Light playing each other, Natty playing each other with the exception of one game each week. It'll be interesting to see how the teams kind of beat up on each other, and if it comes to fruition that 3 teams in one division missed the playoffs. So that will be something to watch. But overall, I don't really have much problems with the power rankings. I think my ranking is justified, sadly, with being at 4. Icing on the cake, obviously, Michael Thomas injury. That was the last thing I guess I'll touch on because it's been a rough week for the corpse of the Bald Brawlers. Drafted Michael Thomas when actually there were a few teams that were interested in draft day, and I actually did my roster construction because thinking Michael Thomas would be there by the time the playoffs at least came around. Unfortunately, he decides to step back and be done for the year. So go fuck yourself, Michael Thomas. I've made trades assuming you were going to be my flex, and now my team is in shambles. So the Ball Brawlers, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to just scrap away, and our goal really is to make the playoffs and see if we can hold off Bilt and Schultes for the bye. I'm lucky enough to have the head-to-head wins against them earlier in the year because Lord knows it's going to be tough now later this year, especially if McCaffrey's coming back. The goal for the Ball Brawlers is to make the playoffs. If we can somehow get a bye, that's icing on the cake. And in fantasy playoffs, you never know what's going to happen. Jonathan Taylor did Derrick Henry-like things last week, so we're going to need more of that. And yeah, shit, I don't really have much else to say. We'll hopefully get back to a more regular scheduled YarskCap next week. It's just, my king is dead. King Henry fell, and there's not much we can do. But with that, I'm going to wrap up the Week 9 YarskCap recap. And good luck on the battlefield, everybody, because it's a fucking war.